This is the third documentary in a series discussing the Dry Creek Watershed. The previous two videos covered December Salmon Count 2011 by Michael Stark and The History and the Future of the Dry Creek Watershed are both available on YouTube.
Uncle Rinkus the watchblock.
Huh?
Yeah.
What is it? Say it again.
Uncle Rinkus the watchblock. Indian.
Uncle Ninkus.
Uncle Rinkus.
Uncle Ninkus.
Watchblock.
Uncle Ninkus. A watchblock.
TSWATCHA.
I couldn't say.
The long, hot, dry summer has come to an end. In the month of October, 1.4 inches of precipitation will have fallen in the Sacramento Valley. November will bring an additional 4.3 inches. The parched earth will be rewarded. Local streams will be re-energized. Higher water levels in streams and rivers during fall, winter, and spring will allow adult salmon to return to their natal streams to spawn and renew the cycle of life. Salmon are part of a large family which also includes species of trout. Salmon, however, are anadromous. They are born in fresh water, live most of their adult life in the Pacific Ocean, but must return to fresh water to reproduce. There are 5 major species of salmon. I met Petra Clayton, visiting our Secret Ravine walking trail here in Roseville. Petra is a nature walk coordinator in the Central Beach community of Los Osos, California. She volunteered an easy way to remember the 5 species of salmon.
My name is Petra, and I learned to remember the 5 kinds of salmon by the 5 fingers of my hand. The thumb stands for the chum salmon. The index finger, because you can suck somebody in the eye with that, that is your sockeye salmon. The middle finger, since it's the longest, tallest finger, is your king, so that's your king or schnook salmon. The ring finger stands for the silver salmon because you wear maybe a silver ring on that finger, and your pinky makes you remember your pink salmon, the 5 salmons.
The Dry Creek Watershed lies about 100 miles upstream from San Francisco Bay. The Dry Creek Watershed is relatively small, only about 101 square miles, and is a subset of the much larger American River Basin. Within the watershed are the cities of Loomis, Rockland, and Roseville. After years of absence and having covered thousands of miles in the Pacific Ocean, salmon begin their most difficult challenge of any animal on Earth, finding their way home to their natal stream. Scientists believe salmon use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate their perilous journey home. Other scientists note that the salmon use olfactory senses. Joining the migration are salmon who are lost and choose to follow their peers. The rainy season raises the turbidity in local streams. This too might signal it is time for their final journey. Descending from the Sierra Nevada foothills, small tributaries of the Sacramento River create a liquid highway permitting adult salmon access into California's interior valleys. Chinook are semilparious. They only spawn once in their lifetime. After spawning, the salmon will deteriorate in fresh water and rapidly die. October 2011. The city of Roseville and the Dry Creek Conservancy, in a joint effort, completed work on a fish passage improvement project. Built in the early part of the 20th century, an old railroad bridge and pipeline were removed. Chinook salmon could now more easily have access to the upper reaches of the Dry Creek Watershed. The stream bed was improved with gravel ideal for spawning. Tree trunks and boulders were placed in strategic places, creating ideal pools. Finally, the project area was replanted with California native flora. Fall 2012. The restoration area has proven a success. Native California trees, shrubs, and grasses thrive. The new pools and gravel stream beds await the arrival of the fall 2012 salmon run. Each fall, the Dry Creek Conservancy conducts a one-day count of the number of spawning Chinook salmon within the Dry Creek Watershed. Dave Baker from the Dry Creek Conservancy instructs volunteers on the task before them.
And somebody's going to take their, to record the data. If you find a dead one, you got to stop.
Volunteers and hip waders walk the streams recording the number of live salmon, carcasses, and salmon nests called reds. Lydia Sizlove, Public Works Inspector for the City of Rockland, accompanied by her husband Rich Sizlove and DCC volunteer Ed Krause, head upstream. The team is anxious to see if removal of stream impediments and riverbed improvements downstream has facilitated salmon spawning on the upper reaches of Secret Ravine. The team was excited to have found at least 20 salmon, 1 carcass, and 1 red. Besides salmon, the upper reaches of Dry Creek are alive with beavers and otters. Today was an exciting day. When all the volunteers' observations were tallied, there were 191 Chinook salmon sightings, 16 carcasses, 69 possible reds. 131 of the sightings of live salmon were found along Secret Ravine. While the November 2012 Chinook spawning numbers were encouraging, in 2003, 680 live salmon and carcasses were observed over a 3-hour time period. Just north of the Dry Creek Watershed is the Auburn Ravine Watershed. The Auburn Ravine Watershed begins in the valley farming town of Verona, where the Feather River comes together with the Sacramento River, climbing east to the city of Lincoln, finally reaching into the Sierra Nevada foothills and the city of Auburn, a distance of just 60 miles. Just as with the Dry Creek Watershed, the Auburn Ravine Watershed was impacted first by the 1849 gold rush, followed by large-scale farming, industrialization, and today urbanization. By 2004, a survey by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife reported there were no Chinook salmon within the Auburn Ravine watershed. Longtime resident Jack Sanchez began what seemed an impossible task: re-establish both Chinook salmon and steelhead trout in the Auburn Ravine Creek. His first task would mean gathering like-minded residents, forming a grassroots organization which became known as Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelhead, SARSAS. For success, cooperation would be needed from landowners, Pacific Gas and Electric, and the Nevada Irrigation District. 12 barriers would have to be removed and, where necessary, fish ladders constructed. Because of their tenacious efforts, SARSAS and their partners, Chinook salmon, once again, after more than a century, began returning to Auburn Ravine Creek. By 2010, 30 Chinook salmon had reached Lincoln city limits. 2 years later, on November 2nd, 2012, the fall salmon count reported 191 live salmon, 29 reds, and 16 carcasses. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife reported 93 Chinook salmon had reached the foot of Hemphill Dam, located just east of the city of Lincoln. Efforts are now being made to design a fish ladder around Hemphill Dam. When completed, Chinook salmon will have easier access to the upper reaches and most pristine habitat of Auburn Ravine Creek. The last and most formidable obstacle will be Gold Hill Dam. What seemed an impossible dream is now in sight. Salmon and steelhead trout once again navigating the entire length of Auburn Ravine Creek. Jack Sanchez's dream will be fulfilled. A female salmon may lay up to 3,000 eggs in each red. Typically, it takes 35 to 45 days from fertilization to eyed, when the eye is visible inside the egg. Another 18 to 20 days from eyed to hatch. Then an additional 14 to 21 days until the yolk sacs and the newly born fry are free to feed. A total of at least 67 days. Sadly, however, all is not well. Local residents have not respected the beauty of the river and its habitat. A recent study estimates that nationally, feral cats and outdoor domestic cats are responsible for killing 2.4 billion birds and 12.3 billion mammals each year. Our Central Valley waterways are under great stress. Each fall since 1967, using trawler nets along the Sacramento and San Joaquin deltas, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife conducts an annual fish count. The 2012 fall survey of 6 major species found that all were in severe population decline. There is now actual fear of extinction. Reasons given include water diversion, water pollution, habitat loss, and the introduction of non-native species. Within the Dry Creek Watershed, the state of California has fined Placer County for discharge violations into Miners Ravine of coliform bacteria, mercury, ammonia, and aluminum. The city of Roseville violated coliform bacteria discharge limits. The first week in December, major storms strike Northern California. Since only about 30 days have passed since the eggs were fertilized, the storm raises doubts about the success of this year's salmon run. Rich Sizlove explains what may have happened.
We're discussing, the effects of the storm that just occurred about 3 or 4 days ago, and how the impact on the salmon eggs that we observed were being laid during that annual salmon count. Part of the problem we run into with the high waters like this is it does cause some scouring that will occur. Mortality obviously is a question that we have to worry about, that the eggs, will they survive, in the high water flows like that. Usually on a normal basis without any real high flows, the annual cycle continues with the salmon laying their eggs in the red, which is the nest that the female digs out with her tail, and the male comes along and fertilizes them. The eggs then fall down into the gravel. Hopefully during this last storm that some of the eggs were lodged in some of the larger gravel and it didn't get washed downstream. If they did get washed downstream, there's a possibility they still could survive. And then, like you say, the process starts again where the eggs take about 3 to 4 months to hatch. They'll spend about a year sometimes in the fresh water before the small fry move down into the estuaries, the brackish water, where they become accustomed to salt water before they move out into the ocean to start their life cycle, which usually can run anywhere from 2 to 5 years before they migrate back up into the fresh water again to do the cycle all over again and spawn.
Not knowing if the 2012 spawning season will result in diminished numbers of returning salmon in the years 2014 through 2017 underscores the need to improve water quality in our local streams. Clean streams create better survival rates. Habitat improvement can only be accomplished through a concerted community effort. The newly hatched Chinook salmon will need well-oxygenated, shaded pools of cool, clean water for refuge. They will feed on plankton, then macroinvertebrates, very small aquatic insects and their larvae. Macroinvertebrates can only survive in clean water. Without a food source, the newly hatched salmon fry will not survive. Stormwater runoff is a leading cause of toxic pollution entering our streams. Ms. Smith's students at Sunset Ranch Elementary School in Rocklin, California, a partner of the Dry Creek Conservancy, has made the following video explaining how each of us can keep our streams and watershed clean. Enjoy.
Watershed?
I don't know what a watershed is.
What's a watershed?
A shed? You mean like the one we have out there?
What's a watershed? I have no idea. Hey, what's a watershed? I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you know what a watershed is? No, what is a watershed?
A watershed is where water flows downhill into streams, lakes, or even the ocean. People don't realize that the entire world is made up of watersheds.
Everything goes downhill.
Storm drains carry runoff to a nearby stream. The thing is that this water does not go to a nearby treatment plant to get cleaned.
Whatever goes into a storm drain goes straight to a nearby waterway, so we have to keep them clean. This just won't do.
Oil and exhaust from cars gets onto streets, driveways, and even parking lots. And when it rains, it all goes down into storm drains. Worldwide, there's more oil being washed off streets than being spilled at sea. That's something to think about.
Grass clippings and leaves clog up their storm drains and add sediment to our water systems. That's not healthy for wildlife.
It's called turbidity.
Soap gets put in the drain while people wash their cars too.
That's extra bad for fish and frogs. It's better to go to a car wash or wash your car on the lawn so that it can soak in.
Overwatered lawns and chemical fertilizers and weed killers send polluted water down the storm drains. Is this what you want to happen?
Everybody should pick up their dog poop. E. coli washes away into our waterways and ends up in our oceans. Would you want to swim in this? Use these and pick up your dog or your pet waste.
Yeah, scoop the poop. Everything goes downhill.
And here's where it ends up, even further downstream.
It all went downhill.
This is a wetland area, and it sits at the bottom of a big hill, and there's apartments right over there.
Wetlands were always here, even before these houses were here.
Once they're gone, they never come back. They're important because they act like a big sponge. When it rains, they help keep the river levels normal.
These plants help filter the water. That's good for the fish and the people who like to swim in the ocean.
And the tall plants slow down the water flow so there's less erosion near the waterways.
Everything goes downstream.
Many animals depend on this wetland habitat, like opossums, skunks, red-winged blackbirds, and herons.
And don't forget the frogs.
When things like yard clippings, pet waste, and other bad things like that wash into our storm drains, they go down to wetlands, rivers, and our ocean. We need to keep our wetlands healthy. The birds and the other animals raise their young here. Would you let your little kids swim in a polluted pool?
Of course not. That's disgusting. Please do your part in protecting our watersheds and wetlands. We need to keep our corner of the world healthy.
Absolutely. Everything goes downstream.
Remember, everything goes downstream.
As the students from Sunset Ranch Elementary School explained, everything goes downstream. Urban runoff can degrade the water quality within our watershed and put our watershed at great risk. In most urban communities, the polluted runoff is piped directly into our local streams. The streams carry the toxic cocktail downriver, collecting even more polluted water from industry and agricultural waste. The polluted water eventually spills into our bays, marshes, and into the Pacific Ocean. In the United States, 30 states have oceans fronting their borders. Because of urban runoff, California ranks 21st out of 30 states, exceeding the national standards for safe and clean beaches. There are solutions to help mitigate the ill effects of urbanization on our watershed. On October 25, 2012, the DCC and 23 co-sponsors held a low-impact conference in Rockland. The purpose of the conference was to share ideas and best practices in preventing urban runoff from polluting our watershed. The goal of low-impact development is to restrict urban runoff, thus preventing pollutants from reaching our streams. Slowing the flow, using pervious pavement, rainwater harvesting, and creative landscaping could reduce stormwater runoff, improving water quality in our streams and oceans. It's easy to get involved. Lydia Sizlove explains how you, your family, church, or civic organization can make a difference. Please join us.
There's opportunities to volunteer for the City of Rockland, and you can volunteer by looking at our website. We have a homepage on that, or you can call the City of Rockland Public Services Department with individuals, or you can have family groups or church groups to help volunteer for many volunteers opportunities in that. We also have community service days, usually in the fall for volunteering. We have opportunities that arise like tree planting. We have bollard staining along the parkways here, bike trails. We do oak tree planting. We do DI marking for our storm drain inlets. We do oak tree plantings, and we do bird boxes that I'll show you in a little bit. We do litter pickup. We have a lot of opportunities that we will share with you.
This is a Western bluebird box.
Another one could be constructed would be a bat box, a wood duck box, an owl box. And the nesting season is coming upon us for these birds. This is great out in the open space. The birds just love them. They're very fun to make. You can do it with your dad or your mom, or you can do it in a group setting. The kids love making these boxes. Instructions are fairly easy. Like I say, you can do it in the classroom or at home in the garage, and they're pretty easy to install out here. You can pre-make them at home and then bring them out here and put them out in the open space. It's fun to do, and like I say, the birds love it.
Listed on their website, the City of Roseville offers many volunteer opportunities. roseville.ca.us.
Hi, my name is Paul and I live in Roseville, and I take my son Aiden fishing all the time, and we didn't realize there was salmon in these creeks.
Yes, there are salmon in our creeks, and many more surprises awaiting you. The SARSAS website might have said it best. The health and well-being of salmon is directly linked to that of the people. If we improve the health and well-being of salmon, we improve the health and well-being of mankind and therefore ourselves. Through community outreach, the DCC provides both technical and community workshops, participates in spring and fall festivals, provides free interpretive walks, and takes a leading role in restoration projects. In addition, the DCC provides and collaborates with local schools supporting the Adopt a Watershed program, providing speakers for local classrooms. Please join us in helping preserve our heritage. www.drycreekconservancy.org or www.facebook.com/drycreekconservancy. Thank you.